That which is beautiful cannot come from that which is unconscious. Consciousness, in the purest form, is God. Humans have been trying to understand what God is since the dawn of humankind, and we've treaded pretty close to the sun, but we've been burnt in a lot of ways. Humans don't have the capability of fully understanding what God is because God is outside of the physical plane, and we're only able to understand what is inside the physical plane and just the edges of what's outside of the physical plane. God is so extremely outside of that plane to the point it is physically and mentally impossible for us to fully grasp what God is. But that doesn't mean that we haven't tried. We've been trying for hundreds of thousands of years, if not the whole time that humans have been alive. Most fundamentally, God is more or less of a thermodynamic equation. It's the balance between good and evil, and light and dark, and chaos and order. When I said beauty cannot emerge from that which is unconscious, what I mean is look around. There are human beings, there are complex organisms, there are planets, there are solar systems that perfectly work together in order to provide an environment for a planet and for a set species. This is not an accidental thing. What is beautiful cannot come from that which is unconscious, meaning that things that are advanced and things that are molecularly and atomically advanced, they cannot come from that which is unintelligible. There has to be a set intellect and a set form of consciousness before everything emerged. In order for something intelligent to manifest, or even conscious to manifest, it has to be derived from source. Source being God, source being conscious. There's a set orientation to that source. Because if that source was random and unconscious, it wouldn't be able to molecularly advance at all. There wouldn't be any sense of adaptation, reason, evolution. There would be no sense of observation. People get so misconstrued and held up on whether or not there is a man in the sky, old wise father in the sky controlling everything. And that's just because we have a hard time to not anthropomorphize things that are outside of our comprehension. God is outside of the physical plane, and humans are only able to understand what is inside of the physical plane, as well as slight things that are just outside of the physical plane. Our metaphysical understanding is extremely limited because we are not metaphysical beings. We're encapsulated in flesh. So attempting to categorize and define what is outside of the flesh 9 out of 10 times just leads to division and confusion. I think that the Big Bang, or the inception of reality, was the introduction between time and space. You got two things, time and space, yin and yang, masculine, feminine, chaos, order, good, evil. You could go as deep and fundamental and strip everything away, but you still are ended up with two things that are able to feed off of each other. Two is the innate start of what is symmetry, of what is projection. Now, if you could kind of think back to the start of existence before the universe expanded, you have space. So imagine a vast nothingness. That space cannot envelop matter or proceed or expand because it doesn't have time. It doesn't have time to do set thing. So when you put time into the equation, you're left with space and time. You don't just have space alone, and you don't just have time alone. Space and time by themselves are not able to manifest anything outside of themselves. The second that space and time as ideas meet each other, they're able to expand and create structure. And I think that initial introduction between space and time, however it happened, I think that introduction was able to have a domino effect on innately desiring to project what is beautiful and what is ugly. But what is ugly and unsensible and random does not win in the adaptation and evolutionary race. It dies off. Ideas die so we don't have to. Invalid principles die because they have to die. There's no sanctification. There's no prospering in what is random, because what is random isn't allowed to be logical. The only thing that is allowed to be logical in terms of metaphysics is beauty and symmetry. God seems to be source that projects everything. Everything is able to be scaled back and referenced back to that source. So everything that we see is source, is God, or at least an effect and a consequence from God. You have to think, there has to be a level of consciousness in matter itself, because if matter was unconscious, it would not be able to further complicate itself molecularly. The molecular machine that molecule and group of molecules are creating wouldn't be able to be created if those molecules and that structure did not have a fundamental basis on orientation. If it was just completely random, there would be no orientation that molecular structure would be attempting to do. It seems like opposites create dimensional tension with one another. There cannot be ugliness without beauty. There cannot be good without evil. And equally, those structures feed off and create the opposite structure. Chaos thereby creates order, because the overarching environment that envelops all of reality is innately trying to proceed and progress towards something. And that something being running away from death and trying to get closer to life and having that stable dance between the two. There seems to be an innate push and pull towards every single thing. People often blame God for hardships that go on in life. Like, people get murdered for no reason. People get abused for no reason. And then they say, why would God allow this? If there is a just God, if there is an all-knowing just God, then why would he allow me to suffer? And I think the answer for that lies in the beginning of what God had to do in order to make reality. I think God is in deep pain. That pain does go on in reality. However, reality would not be able to exist without the possibility of pain. We as human beings have what is called free will. We have the ability to choose. We have the ability to move in which way we want. We're able to build empires and create villages that are prosperous, but we're also able to kill half the race, half an ethnicity. We're able to abuse children. The choice is in our ballpark, most fundamentally. I think prescribing free will was, within itself, a deep sacrifice. Maybe the deepest sacrifice there could be. Because think about it, if there was no free will, then we would simply be automatons. We would be complete fleshly robots, void of awareness and void of consciousness, yet still moving. So that means that we're just living to not live at all. I think God genuinely understands that his deep sacrifice to be able to have us live comes with the burden of us being able to commit atrocities for atrocities to happen to us. Because think about it, if life was just purely good and everything was completely fine and already pre-established, then there would not be any meaning towards life. Life wouldn't have any intrinsic meaning. In order for us to be conscious beings, we have to have free will. Those two things cannot be invariably different. It's a matter of definition. In order to be conscious, you have to have free will. These things go hand in hand with one another, because anything outside of free will is already pre-established decisions. It's a role that you're playing, and matter isn't playing a role. Structure is not playing a role. It's playing a game. It's trying to progress and proceed in an elegant manner so it could further evolve into a more optimal system. And that goes for anything in reality. That goes for every metaphysical structure, period, all the way down to the deepest fundamental basis. Structure is trying to proceed to be more elegant and more optimal, just fundamentally. So if everything is pre-established and structure doesn't have free will to be able to have a level of observation and consciousness to why it's either failing or succeeding, then evolution cannot take place. Adaptation cannot take place. Nietzsche said that God has died and we will never have enough water to wash away his blood. I think what he was meaning by that was God might not be here with you and I right now because he's not stopping that child from getting abused. However, everything is downstream from God. Everything is God because God created everything. Therefore, there's nothing outside of God. We can't wash away God. God permeates through everything. Does that mean that in a supernatural capacity, God is able to change structure? I'm not sure. Do I believe in miracles? I'm not sure. But all I do know is that us humans, we have the conscious ability to see those people abusing children, to see the atrocities happening, and we're able to make that conscious decision to further advance society, to have those atrocities become more and more minimal to the point that they're abolished. And that is God. That is the effect of God. So in that way, God is still with us. God is still guiding us, but God can't just overarch evolution. He can't just go forward in time. He has to have time manifest itself in the present moment, because anything outside of that is unnatural and likely impossible. We anthropomorphize God into a man that has like just magical power. Like God could just stop this child from getting abused on a snap of his hand. I think that is an incorrect conceptualization on God very deeply. Prescribing gender-specific ideas onto God is a very complex idea, and there's a lot of basis within that. And I'm not saying that God being anthropomorphized and conceptualized as an old wise man in the sky is completely rubbish and has no basis. I think that there's a lot of beauty in that conceptualization on God. However, God is a metaphysical equation. So when we prescribe those ideas onto God, it allows us to misinterpret God. Now the question is, the introduction between space and time that created everything, is that within itself God, or was God outside of that which created that? Not too sure. I think regardless, both of them are equally God, because one is in the physical sphere and one is in the outer physical sphere. Is there anything outside of the physical? I don't know. There's no beauty without pain. If life was just completely good and jolly, that would just be the baseline reference. Therefore, nothing would be good. Nothing would be beautiful. Beauty only emerges because there are things that are so terrible and so ugly. I think God is in pain watching children get abused and watching ethnicities get killed off, watching people suffer and starve to death. I think that infinitely pains God, but there couldn't be anything any other way. And that is the deep sacrifice of reality. In the Christian ethos, the most fundamental substrata of the information is sacrifice. If you take the whole story of Jesus Christ, and boil it down to the main metaphysical meaning, the deepest meaning in the substrata, it would be sacrifice. Jesus Christ, who lived as a generous, courageous, flawless person, bore the weight of the world's sin. It doesn't necessarily matter if Jesus Christ was the Son of God, because that's so impossible to conceptualize. And also, what do you mean by Son of God? Aren't we all children of God? In my personal belief, it seems like Jesus was the Son of God, just like you and I are. However, he was sinless in his consciousness, and in his awareness, he was able to orientate his life like that, like you and I can do. It's an impossibility just about for you and I, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible for every single organism that has permeated since the dawn of millennia. I think the sanctity behind Jesus Christ and the story of Jesus Christ is beautiful without any limitations. The story for us is to bear our sacrifice in our life, our community, because if we do not bear our sacrifice, however big or small that may be, then we fall short of the glory of God, and we fall short to ourselves as well. Within sacrifice, there is a great deal of pain. That's practically what the word sacrifice means. So we could either fall prey and become the victim, or we could pick up our cross and proceed with courage, just like every other structure in reality, just like every other atom and molecule since the dawn of time. We could either fall short and perish, or pick up our cross and keep going in the midst of it all. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I've been thinking about this information and ideas for quite a while, and I hope that this video wasn't too long and was able to kind of get a good summary on some of these ideas. I think people are extremely hurt by the church and religion. I actually don't think, I know that for a fact. I mean, the moment that people get that amount of power, since we are just fleshly wicked beings, a lot of the time it leads to atrocities. So we have to be very loving with each other and very understanding. And we can't just categorize every single thing and then just lump it in a corner and hate it for all existence. The idea of God and religion are incredibly complex, to the point the main thing that we as a civilization need is just patience and understanding. Atheists can't just hate religion or hate God. Religious folk can't just hate atheists and the idea of a non-God, because the idea is so complex. It's just stupid to degrade people for their beliefs when the beliefs that are trying to be held and conceptualized are so extremely advanced and complex. We're just fleshly organisms. It's very difficult to handle the supernatural and the omnipresent ideas and philosophy and meaning outside of the physical plane. We need more patience with one another and more love towards one another, or else things are just going to get more ugly and more ugly. I really appreciate you for watching the whole video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.